Xenoblade, or Xenoblade, whichever how you wish to end up talking about it. Xenoblade Chronicles 1, Xenoblade Chronicles X, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 were Nintendo's most amazing game franchises made by Monolith Soft, and basically took the storm of when 90% of people actually didn't know this game exists if you are only familiar with nothing else in Nintendo, and if you didn't grow up with both Xenogears and Xenosaga, you probably even know what the hell a Xenoblade even was. Anyways, thanks to Project Rainfall sharing their wonderful heads and releasing 3 amazing games. Don't really know what the other 2 are, but they end up managing to get Xenoblade over to us, and we managed to get our hands off of this very expensive copy of a game with wonderful British actors. But I was thinking of talking about Xenoblade 1 and X, but X I'm keeping it to its own video no matter what, and 1 I was going through it when I was doing this in my head, but then I realized I more so wanted to talk about Xenoblade 2 more so than 1. So Xenoblade 1 will probably end up having its own video, and considering the fact that Xenoblade 3 is rearing its ugly head in a couple of days, I kind of want to more so talk about the game that I end up realizing and having a much better appreciation for since I played it a second time, and that is Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for the Nintendo Switch. Coming out of 2017 January of Nintendo's Direct, they end up showcasing 2 types of trailers, one with the graphics looking like booty, and then a better graphics where they touched up everything and made it a little bit more clearer. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was an amazing adventure from start to finish. At first a bit confusing and a bit jank here and there. It kind of still has a bit of jank when you kind of go back to it compared to Xenoblade 1 and X's combat, and it's a little bit weird. But I will not end up admitting that the cast of characters is wonderful and the direction is questionable. But without further ado, let's go ahead and enjoy this new Pika video as we take a look at Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for the Nintendo Switch. After Xenoblade X came out and people were kind of wondering what was going to be happening in the Xenoblade world, Nintendo ended up basically releasing Xenoblade Chronicles 2 a couple of years after, 2017 showcased its Direct. I think it came out in December, but I could be very, very wrong on that. I was really looking forward to this game, mainly because I was familiar with the #1 game, and I also played a bit of X, even though X didn't really sold me very well, so I didn't really think that we were going to get another Xenoblade game right off the bat. Also, I will be interchanging between Xeno and Zeno. It's kind of really difficult. I know there's an actual pronunciation, but considering the fact I technically end up pronouncing it as Zeno most of the time, even though it's pronounced Zeno or Menno, whatever, I'm just going to be interchanging between the 2. Anyways, let's talk about that story, and obviously there will be spoilers, but that's kinda already obvious as is. Xenoblade 2's story ends up taking place above the clouds where people like us end up living on Titans, in the planet known as Alras. Rex, a salvager, takes on jobs to get paid and sends money to his hometown known as Fonset. Bana calls upon Rex to give him a new job to salvage a sunken ship for a group of people called Torna. Rex is teamed up with such lovely people. These lovely characters are named Jin, Malice, and everyone's favorite waifu, Cat Nia, with her tiger blade Dromok. After Rex tells his grandpa, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and go take this random shady job, nothing bad is gonna happen, since to be fair, it really is a shady job. After a rest and sending more money home, Rex ends up heading off to his new job. And since Rex is technically a salvager, he's the perfect candidate for this job. Nia is the closest age to Rex, and Rex can be able to connect with her as much as he can, since both Malice and Jin are not very good at talking. Rex ends up explaining about the World Tree in a place called Elysium, which, mind you, might as well be the game's heaven. Nia, of course, laughs at such a fairy tale, but Rex knows that it's real, and he intends to find it. At their arrest, Rex and a few other salvagers are tasked to do what they must and raise this boat under the sea. We are then teamed up with either Nia, Malice, or Jin, and having 3 party members, just like Xenoblade 1. You can only have 3 characters at a time, even though you may notice you have more characters running around. So let's explain those tiny bits, shall we? There are both drivers and blades. Drivers are of course the people who fight, and blades are the ones that gives the energy to allow their drivers to perform arts and many other attacks. When the blade and driver are synced together, they mostly have incredible power. I really enjoy this for both story element and battle element because it ends up reminding me of an anime known as Soul Eater for weapon related to blades. It's really cool, for me anyways. After making it to the bottom of the ship, we find out the real reason Rex was picked. It seemed he was the only person who could end up opening this door. And it's people's favorite fire blade. But before we can actually end up finding out her name and among other things, and also take a hold of the blade, Jin proceeds to nothing personal Kid Rex in the back, killing him on the spot. See, this wouldn't be surprising except thanks to like the 10-minute explanation when the direct was happening. They kind of already showed Rex in other places, so he kind of wasn't really dead. It's kind of my reason why I no longer look up massive trailers anymore. It's also kind of the reason why I avoided Xenoblade 3's reveal big trailer stuff that they kind of showcased, but that's neither here or there. Anyways, so much information, I gotta say. After getting cut down super quick, mind you, Rex ends up in the Majora's Mask moon area and meets up with a girl who is sleeping. Her name is Pyra, and she wants Rex to take her to Elysium. Rex given a second life and also part of Pyra's core crystal alongside, taking the blade in hand, we get our revenge on Malos. This is actually where the battle system slowly starts to shine, and I really mean slowly start to shine. And if I explain the battle system now, we're going to be here forever. But that's fine, but it's me talking, and we all know how much I love talking about battle systems. Alright, so Xenoblade 2 plays almost the same as Xeno 1. You have 3 characters in battle while the blades give energy to use what is known as blade combos. Blade combos allows your blade to do one of 4 level moves. 1 is mostly one target, 2 sometimes ends up attacking everybody, and 3 is more powerful than 1, and 4 can only be achieved once you reach max affinity. Yes, you heard me right. The affinity is back, except this time it's more integrated more fully into Xenoblade 2's combat system. Whenever you start a fight, your blade thrust will be blue, but once you reach a max affinity, you can end up having this be a little bit faster if you end up utilizing certain particular items. But as the battle progresses, it will end up turning yellow and allow your blades to activate more skills, buffs, and allow you to use level 4s. Yes, even though you may seem like the blades is not doing anything in battle, they technically are actually giving you buffs and debuffs to enemies and whatnot. It's a little better in the DLC, but in terms of the main game is kind of odd, but what are you gonna do? The tips and tricks of this game are not really good at explaining much for the new player. In fact, if the tutorial for this game is kind of one of the biggest gripes a lot of players end up having. There are like tons of videos, people are explaining how combat works, how blade combos works, and all that other stuff. And it's kind of ridiculous too. And I really am hoping that they learned from this massive mistake, because when Xeno 3 showcased itself for the first time for the second trailer that they released, there was a lot of stuff on the screen. I mean, they probably explained it more in that standalone direct for itself, but I didn't watch that, so I don't really know any sort of context, and I really don't feel like watching it at all, mind you, because I'm avoiding it as much as possible. Anyways, there's a lot of information to take in the game. At first, it ends up feeling overwhelming, but after like 2 or 20 hours, you'll slowly end up understanding the basics on how some things work. Anyways, moving on. After we end up finding out the battle system and everything, we end up beating Malos. Rex, Pyra, and Nia manage to escape thanks to the help of Rex's grandpa. Sadly, this unfortunately causes Grandpa to turn into a little tiny cute plushie that you could probably end up getting on Amazon.
Glad you're okay, Grumps.
The group finds Nia being attacked by a frog, and we end up getting ourselves another party member. Because at first when Nia, Jin, and Malos joined our party, you couldn't really edit them at all, or really do anything with them for that matter. But once Nia fully joins your party, you can tell her to use Dromox's blade attacks. You will mostly be doing this a lot to build up another blade combo system, which I call the Elemental Combo. So whenever Nia or whoever starts out a blade move, you will see up in the right corner that you see a bunch of elemental looking icons. This tells you that if you use said element, it will move up or down. Once it does that, we hope you have the next element to keep the combo going, because once you manage to do that for 3 times, the combo will gain an elemental orb. This not only gives you a chance to do an elemental break, but you also give the bit of elemental resistance to that element. Here we get a bit of a mechanics I'm not a huge fan of, and that is the field skill. If you're familiar with Pokemon and how HMs work, think of the field skills as HMs. They suck, and they break the massive pace of the game if you do not have the field skill required. But you end up having to be a certain level or blade to accomplish the field task, and luckily enough, all you need is level 1 fire to pass through the first one. But later down the road, the field skills becomes a bit more annoying for my taste, and some are unfortunately mandatory to continue the game. Once you've exited the forest, Rex and Nia find that they are in the Gormadian Titan, the Titan where the race of Gormadis live, and Nia is of course a Gormadi. This is actually where she was born. The group makes it to Torgoth, and we get introduced to how blade bonds worked. Blades come in core crystals, and if you're worthy enough, you will get a nice blade companion. But if you're not worthy, well...
Yeah, he's done for.
Indeed.
Yeah, you just like die or whatever. Anyways, we take the other way around to avoid the troops, but of course it's not easy. We get surrounded, we get into a scrap, and of course get told about a few new battle systems. The one major thing I know about this game compared to Xenoblade 1 is that the Xenoblade 2, you can cancel your 3-hit combo attack. You will always be auto-attacking whenever the character is ready. But in Xenoblade 2, you have 3 auto-attacks with the third strike being the strongest. Whenever you hit an opponent with your auto, it builds up your 3 art skills. Cause unlike Xenoblade 1, where your arts have a regular cooldown, arts in Xenoblade 2 only cools down with each strike you make. So for a more fast build-up, you can cancel your first auto every time you hit your opponent. It's better this way, since if you do a full 3-hit combo, you'll mostly be wasting a bit of time without using your arts. But then again, it really all depends. After defeating those wonderful soldiers that won't let you forget them, and the group fights against another opponent this time. This one is made of a blue fire. Her name is Bridget. After taking out Bridget and we get to see some smart moves from Rex, both Nia and Dromok are unfortunately captured while both Pyra and Rex escape, but before they can run a bit further, a Nopon ends up helping them out. This Nopon is unfortunately my spirit ammo, and his name is Tora. Tora wants to be a driver, but unfortunately he's not fit to be one, since he's unworthy. Tora agrees to help Rex rescue Nia, but first we have to help Tora with his little project. See, just because Tora is unable to be a full-fledged driver, he has been making an artificial blade. While Rex and the other finds information about Nia and parts for Tora's artificial blade, we found out how blade bonding fully works. Time for the best part of the game, and that part is where kids cry and players weep. There are a lot of blades in the game, and I mean a lot. The first cutscene you see is generic blade number 69, but there are also cool looking blades designed by different types of artists, and it's kind of crazy how many blades are actually in this game. And these blades are only attained by, you guessed it, the gacha system. Yeah, the gacha blade system. There are ways to make the blades you want to come out, but 9 out of 10 you just pray for RNG Architect that you get one of these many rare blades. Is this an option? Sadly, you have to do this, because if you think this is optional, think again. Remember what I said about those wonderful little field skills? Well, you see, most of the rare blades or the normal blades have field skills you might need later down the road. You can't really beat the game with the blades that you start with. Just because you got Pyra, who's supposed to be the Aegis blade, she doesn't really come equipped with other means, and none of the others do anyway. So yes, you unfortunately will have to utilize the gacha system, but don't worry, core crystals are very easy to come by. There's common, rare, legendary. Legendaries is sometimes guaranteed. It's not fully guaranteed that you'll get a actual blade. Usually it's kind of sad when you don't get an actual blade and you just get a generic blade and you're sad for like the majority of the game. Rare blades have a 20% chance of actually getting an actual blade, and common blades, well, I hope you love like the 0.5%, because you ain't getting a good blade unless you're super goddamn lucky. Not only that, it's the best to have a lot of blades since, well, it'll make the battle a little bit more varied. Once you've gotten parts for Tora and we get the perfect setting to allow his artificial blade to come to life,
Greetings, Master Pawn.
I did it! Tora's masterpiece. World's first artificial blade, Poppy!
this is Poppy. We're introduced to her in a very adorable way. She's an adorable blade who's also one of the strongest in the game. Poppy has the same skill tree chart like all the other blades, but she's the only blade you can end up customizing to your own needs. With using ether crystals, you can buy a few upgrades to give them to Poppy, turning her into a healer, tank, or DPS. Speaking of healer, tank, and DPS, that's something that this game ends up having compared to the other games, roles. If you look at the blades, you will notice that you'll see attack, healer, and tank. You can make your characters into a tank, DPS, or a healer. Or if you want them to be all above, then go nuts. This is important since every blade in the game works with heals, tanking, or mostly attacking. And don't worry, it's just like Xeno 1, just this time you can end up setting it up a little bit better, and you can make everybody into Charlotte, and probably a much better Charlotte, because I find that the healers in this game are actually pretty boss. After having Poppy in the team, Tora gives us the lowdown on the Tiger minigame, which is mostly a minigame you play to gather more ether crystals and parts for Poppy. I like this minigame. I don't grind for crystals when I first end up playing the game because I didn't really want to break the game, even though I kind of should because the game was kind of difficult when I first played it, but you wouldn't even notice it when it comes to later down the road. The team then heads to the ship that's where they're holding Nia thanks to a Napon informer, and we end up rescuing her along the way.
I didn't hurt anyone, did I?
But after we fight a few soldiers, we end up finding Nia, and we end up having the true full party of 3. Tora being the tank, Rex being the DPS, and Nia being the healer. After you make it to the end of the ship, we run into Dunghal, a guy that I completely end up ignoring, who was basically speaking with Vanna at the time because Pyra, who's in Aegis, is pretty important. Pyra is not only a person who managed to end up destroying Torna 500 years ago, but it's also something that people want to get their hands on since she is a very powerful blade. Hence why the soldiers, otherwise known as the Ardanian soldiers, were after us. Dunghal uses his blade, but more so to hide behind his blade since, he doesn't really care for its emotion or his physical pain. See, even though blades can't really feel true pain, they can still be harmed in many ways and forms. Dung, however, does not care and mainly uses his blade as a weapon. As the group manages to take care of him, they run outside to run into another problem. Get used to that. This happens a lot in this game. The group luck sucks. They run into Bridget's driver, Morag, a renowned soldier of Morodain, and she should not be taken lightly. Here we are shown more of when two drivers are synced with each other, but thankfully, both Rex and Pyra are also synced as well. Using a very well pushed strategy to watch both Morag and Bridget away, we managed to end up fully escaping their clutches, ending the chapter. They make it more obvious that the game is chapter by chapter based, since in Xenoblade 1 you only knew that the chapter you were in by the prompt of the save, or in the save file that says what chapter you are in. The start of each chapter in Xenoblade 2 gives you a little bit of a cutscene that can either be a flashback or that might end up coming up later down the road in the future. The start of a chapter has Malos and a new young man named Akos, this guy is a meme, and will be trouble for our heroes later on. The group reaches the Napon that Tora knows and helps us out by sending them off on the boat to the tree. But we all know that it's not going to be that easy. After gathering the tools, you're sent off, and as the group makes it close to the tree, they are attacked by a serpent-like machine that Pyra calls Ophion. Ophion attacks the group, but they avoid it just to get swallowed up by a titan named Oriah. Like I said, this group has wonderful luck. The group runs into a mercenary, drivers, and Blades. The leader of the group, named Vandam, is not only going to be Rex's teacher, but also be the character to teach Rex on how to be a protagonist. As of right now, Rex is slowly growing, and Vandam here knows the ins and outs of how drivers and blades work. When fighting, he is basically holding back and explains how the energy threads the blade sends out works when the threads are cut off. The drivers are unable to perform any of their blade attacks. Van Damme asks Rex and the others to help him out with something. And while on the trip, he teaches Rex a new ability, where his move Anchor Shot gains the ability to cause topple on enemies. Yeah, when you first start the game, Rex is unable to topple enemies, but once this happens, he gains the ability. I do like when games have cutscenes that will relate to combat later down the road, because, you know, it'd be kind of weird if we can just instantly just topple enemies without really any sort of explanation. As the group makes it to their destination, we end up utilizing the knowledge from the previous enemies against the boss here. The group witnesses a blade returning back into a core. Van Damme goes on to explain that when a driver dies, the blade will return to a core crystal. Not only that, that blade will have zero memory of their previous driver. This is actually pretty sad when you think about it, because even though blades have almost a very infinite lifespan, their drivers, however, do not, and all the wonderful memories they had will disappear. But Pyra also brings up a good point about losing memories sometimes can be a good thing. It's nice to forget the bad memories that you had in your past life. After the mission, the team heads to the mercenary base and takes a bit of a rest, but not before Van Damme takes a notice that both Rex and Pyra have the same cuts. This is mostly because Rex is not a normal driver. He shares the same life energy as Pyra, meaning if Pyra dies, so does Rex. The Torna driver, Akos, makes his appearance, and the player might like or hate Akos after this battle. The game teaches how chain attacks works, and yes, you can't use chain attacks until you reach this part of the game. The only difference is that compared to Xenoblade 1, you end up utilizing the blades in your team to either break the elemental cores or use it to revive, just like in Xenoblade 1. You mostly want to use it as a means to maybe revive or break elemental core crystals of your choice. Once you do that and deal massive damage, Akos is taken care of, but he starts to attack the group, but not before taking notice that when he attacks Pyra, Rex also takes damage. Akos takes notice of this and says that the Aegis is now mortal. Since Pyra is not a normal blade, Van Damme, luckily enough, comes to the rescue with his blade Rock to use his wind to cut off the energy ties between Akos and his blade Obrona. After Akos leaves, Pyra gets knocked down and takes a bit of a rest. Van Damme mainly talks to Rex a bit about what he wants or why he fights or what kind of war he is fighting for. It is actually pretty super important because Rex at this point has one goal in mind: to take Pyra to Elysium. But this is also something I love about the game. Don't get me wrong, I still love Xenoblade 1. But the thing I enjoy about Rex's character, and I'm not sure how many end up agreeing or disagreeing with this, Rex is a growing protagonist. You watch him make stupid errors when fighting alongside Pyra, misusing too much of her power or attacking wildly without any thought. He does not know what he wants to do, but has just one goal: to take someone to where they need to go. Rex has shown combat abilities when he was attacked in Vanna's office, but these types of combats are not ordinary battles, and we will see more of this later down the road in the story. And I mostly took notice of this more when I played the game for this PikaTalk video, and I'm glad I'm doing this. Anyways, enough gushing, I got more to gush about. After the team rests up and Nia tells Van Damme that she's part Torna, the team heads to their next destination, Fonsamayam, or the capital. I'm just gonna call it that because trying to pronounce most of these names is impossible for me, to meet with a man named Minoff. But before we get to Fonsamayam, we get introduced to the most anime-like character in the story, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Behold the mighty Zeke von Gembu, bringer of chaos! Mostly known as Zeke, and often addressed as the Zekenator! Behold my blade, Pandoria! And this is my sword, the Purple Lightning Dream Smasher! If you want a taste, come and get it!
The bringer of chaos, Zeke himself. A man of many styles and grace, and his little pet turtle, his blade named Pandoria, looking like a punk-style electric elemental girl. These two are easily dealt with quickly, and the group heads off to the next stop. After arriving to the capital, the group learns of the history of the mighty Aegis through the stage play, and meets with Mithra, who helps us a bit on how to get to Elysium, but not before having a little chat with Pyra, since they go way back. Both Malice and Akos arrive to stir up some trouble by kidnapping Minos' granddaughter, and forces Pyra to come along to prevent any harm. Rex and the rest go on to rescue Pyra, and she's not doing so well against Malice since she's not really using her full power yet. Arriving at the nick of time, the fight between Malice and Akos turns into for the worse, as both sides are not doing so well. Echo's Blade's ability has the power to sap away ether energy from blades. This becomes a massive problem for the group, and Vandam uses his last resort by impaling himself with Rox's blade and is immune from Echo's ability. Of course, this comes at a risk. Vandam tries to beat Malice, but is sadly cut down, causing Vandam's death. Rex trying his best to strike down Malice, but just before Malice can strike Rex down, Pyra transforms into her other form, which is everyone's favorite tsundere, introducing Mithra, the light version of Pyra, and uses the ability that's a bit similar to the Monado from Xenoblade 1. Mithra can use an ability called Foresight, allowing the user to see their opponent's movements before it happens. Now, you may think that it probably doesn't really activate in the battle, but it actually does. It's just really difficult to really even tell, to be honest. I don't even blame people if they really think that Foresight is not really utilized in the battle, because you kind of not really paid attention all that much. The battle proves difficult for both Malice and Echoes, and they dip out of there like a sack of potatoes. That makes no sense. Anyways, Vandam is sadly gone, and Mithra is pissed that she had to use her original powers again, since the whole point of Pyra was to seal her powers away. At this point in time, once Vandam is taken out, Rex sort of starts to slowly change just a tiny bit. Nothing major yet. Meanwhile, after putting Vandam to rest, Menoff reveals himself to be a flesh eater. Flesh eaters are mostly blades that are full humans for the most part. Blades have the ability to sort of take the life force of their partner and combine it with their core crystals to extend their life. Menoff is one of the many flesh eaters, and once we get further into the game and also the Torna Golden Country, we will learn more about them and also about him. Rex is then given Menoff's blade knife and tells him that his old driver Amalthus can tell him how to get to the World Tree. Mainly because Amalthus is one of the people that manages to climb the World Tree to find 2 of the core crystals, yada yada yada. We need to go there, and the place that Amalthus is living on is Indal. But not before Rex tells Menoff to write a play about the great hero Vandam. At the return to the mercenary village, Rex and the others give the news about Vandam and was also told about Vandam's final gift. The gift is taken over the mercenary group, and this unlocks another feature in the game. A feature that's important to some side quests and upgrading the development to each Titan region. This feature allows you to send blades you're not using to do random tasks that can net items, or allow missions that upgrades the shops in the area. This is actually pretty important, because one side quest back in Gormat was a side quest to buy all the items in the shop. Once you bought all the items, you will be given a deed. The deed comes with passive upgrades to gather items, and increased movement speed, and among other things. I find this better on how Xenoblade 1 ends up handling it, because in Xenoblade 1 you have to equip a gem that essentially allows you to quickly move around, while in 2 you just need the deed to the shop and boom, you get the passive forever. The only problem is that sometimes you may not get all the items in the shop until you complete a quest. That's actually where side quests from both the mercenary and from the actual side quests in the game comes from. Anyways, after the group finishes up the village, they end up heading to Argentum to get a ride to the ship that's heading to Morodain. But before that can happen, we get a detour, and by a detour I mean a Gormati kid ends up padding the game out by stealing Rox's core, since, we kept it with us after Vandam passed away. Given the chase, we end up back to Gormat, and they explain to us why they actually did what they did. It seems they were trying to get revenge on a group of bandits. Rex, being the righteous hero that he is, ends up swearing to the kids that he'll help them out. The bandits are behind a toxic wind, and the team reawakens Rock's core, and Rock, being reawakened, of course does not remember his original driver, but he seems to recall just a tiny small bit of his old master. Thanks to Rox's ability, we find the bandits and take them out, while also giving the kids some new jobs. The team then ends up heading to Morodain, where more crazy things may happen. On the way from crossing Albed Place, the team takes a bit of a rest, but not before having a bit of an encounter with another poppy-like robot. Thanks to Tora, who knew the name, the artificial blade is known as Lila. The team gives chase to Lila as they encounter and fight her before she escapes. Meanwhile, Morag ends up showing up at the most inappropriate time and thinks Poppy is the cause of the problem in Morodain. But luckily enough, Anapon reassures that it was another blade, and Poppy has nothing to do with it. The group gets Morag's permission to allow the group to find clues about the artificial blade Lila, and we find out where her location is. Now, you're probably wondering, gee, why aren't you mentioning the hot spring section in the game? Do I really need to even mention that? That's not even part of the story. I mean, There is one part where Mithra ends up mentioning that she'll keep Nia's secret or whatever, but we don't know what that secret is, and I'm pretty sure it's not that important. Anyways, the group then encounters Banna again. Yeah, you remember Banna, that guy, that he exists? And we end up finding Torres' father. We find out that Lila is being controlled by Banna and is forced to take us down. Luckily enough, Poppy is a goat and manages to take Lila down, but before we can finish her off, Torres' father stops Poppy and rekindles with her once again. Since, to be honest, it's not really her fault for attacking, and she didn't really do anything bad, if we like to believe, but was more so Banna doing the controlling, so you know how it'd be. Rex and the others leave Tora and Poppy as they go after Banna. Banna uses some bigger version of Lila and attacks the group. With the fight going really weird, Poppy and Tora comes back to save the day, with Poppy taking on a new form that you'll probably only see a very few times in the game.
Initiating QT mode. Engage!
Turning Poppy into Poppy QT, a much more stronger version of Poppy base form. With her newfound powers, the team managed to take Banna down. While running away, the team corners Banna as we find out the people who he's been working for. We meet more of Torna's members, meet Mikhail and Petroka. This was the fight that had me change the difficulty down, mainly because I didn't like this fight and I also didn't even realize how the battles work. And the reason for that is a back-to-back fight, and this was the point I sucked majorly in the battle system. Trust me, it was pretty bad. It was rough, but I did get past it eventually. I was still confused on what to do though. And boy, this did not give me confidence for future fights in the story. Once you finish the first fight, Morag joins the fray, and after they finish both, Mikhail and Petroka get subdued by a weird power, by a priest-looking girl who goes by the name of Fen Lenore.
Who's that?
We are then told that we are invited to meet with Amalthus, the leader of Endal, who we of course want to go see in the first place. So we of course head there, but not before we head to Rex's hometown, Fonset. Pyre really wants to see Rex's hometown. I guess you can. Here in Fonset we learn a bit more about Rex. He was brought here as a child by his mother, that both his parents unfortunately also passed away. His mother passed away once she basically ended up bringing Rex to Fonset, and his father was basically passed away somewhere off into the distance. This of course made Rex become a salvager and of course help send money to Fonset whenever he can. He also allows Pyre to meet with his aunt, who took care of him after the passing of both his parents. We also learn that both Blaze and Drivers can get married and, do the little bit of the shindig. Yeah, so this of course causes Pyre to blush, but also saying that she might not want to be with Rex or be around anymore, since it might be better for everyone else if she was just gone. After a bit of a rest and a bit of a heart-to-heart, the team then heads to Indal, but not before being stopped by Zeke and Pandoria once again. Oh, I also forgot, during the time looking for Lila back in Moradane, the team actually did meet Zeke and Patty again, but they were easily dealt with by a rock, so it's all good. Here, however, both Zeke and Pandora fight the team for reals this time, and prove to be a challenge. It seems the reason he was fighting us was not only testing the Aegis, but to also watch over Rex. Zeke and Pandora joins the team as everyone heads to Indal, as we finally make it to the next area, Indal. Yes! We are finally here, and we end up getting some answers about the World Tree and other things. Rex and the others meet with the leader of Indal, Amalthus, and agree to help Rex to climb the World Tree. But before things can happen, Jin manages to hijack Elysium Titan and uses its weapons to attack the troops of Oriah. Amalthus tasked the group to investigate and discovered that the senator did not issue any attack. Cause see, the thing is, the kingdom of Oriah and the kingdom of Moradane are kinda in a sort of scuffle, and thanks to Jin hijacking the Elysium Titan and also striking first, this kinda obviously triggered the Oriah troops to end up firing back, which is a bit of a problem because we end up having a war that is very unnecessary. The team heads to Tamburtina and tries to stop Jin, but not before dealing with the Titan's defense system. Jin approaches the group and manages to kill Fan Lenore, but not before she reminds him of someone. Having Akos come to Jin's aid and escape once again, the team has no way to stop both Araya and Moradane from fighting, but luckily enough, the indulged Titan stops them both, as they have a bit of conversation together. Politics. Fan Lenore is buried, but not before Mithra notices that half of her core crystal is missing, meaning someone took one half of her core crystal. This is actually pretty interesting, because I also didn't notice this when I first played the game. The middle part of Pyra and Mithra's core crystal was missing since it was given to Rex. A nice detail that I clearly missed on my first playthrough. After the passing of Fan, Mithra has a conversation with the leaders of the Titans and informs that Malus is mostly behind the majority of the issue. During the time, Morag's brother Noel is dealing with Banna, and the team gathers some info before heading to take care of them. After a comedic stop at poisoned food, and also trying to get some compensation, the team encounters Banna and takes care of his robot Buster once again. The team, however, ends up realizing that Banna ends up having a nasty trick and causes himself to explode, and Noel using himself and his blade as protection. Unfortunately, this deals heavy blow to him and is killed. As the team is saddened by his sacrifice, Nia tells Dromok to distract the group so she can do something. It's not shown yet, but it seems Nia has a bit of a secret about herself. Thanks to whatever Nia did, Noel is back to tip-top form. The team does not bother to question it too much since the focus is that, hey, Mori's brother's alive, so moving on. After the whole Banna problem, the team heads to Zeke's home, Tento. Before the team ends up getting to their destination, Zeke ends up asking the real question, Pyra or Mithra? Rex being himself, he gives the pros on both of them and does not give Zeke a straight answer. Reaching our Xenoblade 2 Style of an Ice area, the team heads to the capital of Thursar, the Genbu's capital, and meet with Zeke's father. Unfortunately, it's not really a very welcoming thing, because we noticed that if you remember what happened with Shulk and his team during the High Entia incident in Alchemov, this is no different. The team is then captured since they fear Pyra, locking the team away and having Pyra hooked up to being shot by the ether accelerator cannon. The team of course managed to escape and rescue Pyra, but of course at the cost of directing the cannon's fire, Genbu's crow, and hitting the Omega Fetter, aka the thing that allows Pandora to talk with Genbu. Genbu slowly starts to sink to the bottom as the team makes their way to the ground to fix it. Once the team ends up going down and reaching the bottom, they fix the Omega Fetter and then ends up meeting with Mikhail, Petroka, and Akos once again. But this time, not with their blades, and reveal themselves as blades themselves, aka Flesh Eaters, having to fight them once again and taking them down easily. Yeah, easily. Anyways, Jin and Malus joins the fray, but mostly Jin as he showcases his true power. You see, Jin is not just skilled with a sword, but he also has the ability to freeze his opponent and have the controls over elementary particles. Yep, this is definitely an anime, which allows him to be fast, super fast. And Jin is also so powerful that Mithra's foresight does nothing, and also showcases he can withstand the power of Mithra's robot, Siren, one of Mithra's most powerful attacks. With the battle going really bad, Mithra reverts back to Pyra, and just as Jin is about to cut down Rex, Pyra stops him by having a bit of a deal. If she leaves Rex alone, she would go with Malus to open the world tree, but if denied, she will blast herself, killing herself in the process. Jin mostly thinks, I can stop you, but Pyra already foreseen all these possibilities. They both accept her deal, and Pyra takes the core crystal from Rex before departing. Now, the thing I love about this scene is, well, two things. Bridget opens her eyes, that's when you know things is serious. And two, the thing that Jin says to Rex is mostly the reason why I love Rex's character, and also Jin as well. Jin says to Rex that you never saw how hurt your blade was, and you never really cared how she was feeling. He thought that he was different, but he was just a kid. The fact Jin outright tells Rex this makes it clear that it's true that Rex is really not perfect right off the bat. He has made errors time and time again and has always put Pyra and himself in danger. He maybe knows how to say some words here and there, but in terms of fighting, he's nothing like the people Jin has been with. Jin is a blade, so he has seen many things back then. And the fact he sees Rex, a young boy who was given the ability to wield the Aegis, a powerful blade like some sort of toy, really disappointed Jin. Jin and the others leave as Pyra is taken from the group. And this chapter is the one chapter as a whole that made me fully love the storytelling in Xenoblade 2. I know it's weird to gush so much about the story, but jumping the gun, here is why I love the story of Xenoblade 2 more than 1. 1 still has some very well done moments, but this right here I enjoy. And it's kind of one of the reasons as to why I more so wanted to do a video of Xenoblade 2 more so than 1. Because 1 has been told of many a times, many people already know it, but I feel that 2, not a lot of people really play it that much because of how the combat is compared to 1 and also X. So I kind of wanted to end up, dipping my feet into the Xenoblade 2 universe myself. And, since I kind of have a little bit more to say for 2 than I do for 1, I kind of want to just save 1 and X for its own video, which basically ended up me being an excuse by saying, man, I really should not have promised to do both videos at the same time. That was so early stupid. Never again. Trying to do 2 JRPGs is actually the most bad thing to do. Anywho, after the battle, Rex and the others have been resting for a while, and Rex sadly have lost Pyra, has also given up, which of course is the same thing that happens with Shulk when he found out that he's been dead all this time. Anyways, after the team sees that Rex is just about to go off home and thinks that Pyra will be fine with Jin and Malice, the team respectively pounds some senses into them. Nia, Poppy, Bridget put senses back into Rex, and as we go back to speak with Zeke's father, he mentions a third Aegis Blade exists. Azuda informs Rex if he's ready to accept Pyra and Mithra for who they are, and with a nod we head back to Fonset Village. Meanwhile, during all of this is happening, Malice is getting ready to regain his powers once again. Rex and the others head to the Spirit Crucible Elpis, where the third blade is located. Here, there's a bit of a gimmick. Your blade attack powers are a bit limited, since the ether down here is mostly non-existent, and I do love this, but I also hate it as well. Anyways, this is the start as to when I start to dislike the field skills. You need a few field skills to get past this area, but first playthrough, me never knew about that, so I didn't really know how to level up blades or any of that other stuff, so it was very, very complicated because I was dumb. After making it halfway, it was revealed that Zeke and Pandora share a bigger bond than just being drivers and blades. But thanks to undergoing a procedure from the Praetor, his life was extended. The detail I do like about this is that Pandora, after the reveal, you can see her eyes. At first when you meet Pandora, you can't see her eyes at all through her glasses, but after the reveal with Zeke, her eyes can be seen throughout the rest of the game. Getting further down, we end up getting a little bit of a snippet of Nia's backstory. It seems Nia had a sister who was frail and sick, and she was to study to be a lady, until her driver spent all their money for a search for a cure. Sadly, this caused them to be drifters, and as a result, Nia's sister passed away. But not before the Lord ended up making Nia do the unthinkable. After the team makes it down below to find the third blade, they are attacked by Shadow Atoms, who start to overwhelm the team's party. But Nia is tired of not helping and hiding from her true self. Nia reveals her true form as the form of a flesh-eater blade, and boo boy, it's nice character development for Nia, who has now accepted herself as who she is and no longer hides behind her human form. And she also reveals that she loves Rex. And how does Rex respond to this?
I love you too. I love you and all you guys.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because...
Ooh, friend zone. Yeah, that's right. This scene gets memed on to hell and back. You all thought Melia had it bad? Nah, bro. Nia gets it so much worse. Tell someone you love them and they say I love you and all my asshats friends. After Rex shuns Nia love away, Rex managed to meet with Adam. We don't get to see his face, give it to the DLC, but he mostly tells Rex he was unable to accept Mithra and Pyra for who they are. And of course, Rex being different, he mostly will accept both of them for who they are inside and out. The team is confused if Rex obtained the third blade, but does not tell them as he already knows. The group heads to the Cliff of Mortha to rescue Pyra and Mithra. Once they arrive, Malice is already in the process of obtaining his original memories and his full Aegis power. Rex can, of course, still feel the pain that Pyra can feel, and as they are running out of time, they head off to stop Jin and Malice. Malice, retaining his power, approaches the group and of course fights the group. Now, this part shocked the crap out of me, since I don't really look too deep into the lore of Xenoblade, but do remember Xenoblade 1 fully, the Monado. The fact that this battle has Malice using Monado arts from Xenoblade 1 shocked the hell out of me. But me trying to win the fight, and the fact that I was also happy and confused, and was wondering what the hell was going on with the story, and I'm just confused all around. Ignoring all that aside, the group managed to stop Malice as Nia uses her abilities to explode the cells within Malice, giving him a dummy thick body and exploding his entire body. The team heads for Jin to save Pyra. Unfortunately, we were a little too late. And what's worse, Malice was not even taken care of since, well, you know, he has his full powers again, so he just healed and just said, lol, you can't kill me. Nia's abilities was not able to be any actual effect. The group starts to fall apart since both Malice and Jin are fighting at almost full power, Rex not backing down and wanting to help both Mithra and Pyra as much as he can. Even if they told him just leave them, and their plans was to ask their father / creator to kill them. But Rex is not having any of that and swears to accept and ask them both if they love the world they live in. Accepting their power and lives, Rex taps into the full power of Pyra and Mithra and obtains the final Aegis Blade. Similar to how Shulk got the Monado 2, Rex get a badass moment as well. Getting a new set of armor, and Pyra and Mithra takes on a new form, their true form, Numa. With the full power of their blade and Rex being able to utilize all the elements that he can, and the combo blade attacks are easier to perform, except you can only use it like once per battle. The only drawback, and I can understand why they do this to be fair, is that, you know, they didn't want Numa to be too broken. So, hey, you know, gotta limit her as much as you can, am I right? Yeah. After the battle takes a turn for the better, we manage to get the upper hand on Jin, and matches his speed. Rex, being like the player, says that everyone's thinking,
I don't get it, but I'm not complaining.
Rex takes notice that Jin's eyes look sad since, you know, Jin kind of wants Rex to kill him, but Rex is like, nah, I'm not gonna do that, mate. And why would he not be? But before things can be said and done, both Ophion and Siren destroys the cliff and causes the party along with Jin to fall into the cloud of sea, where they end up in the land of Mithra. With Rex awakened, he finds Mithra as she goes on to see that the form she takes is both Pyra and herself. But the player gets to pick what name Rex ends up calling out in the cutscenes. Besides cutscenes, this showcases which waifu you prefer. Honestly, but in all seriousness, first and second for the recording, I picked Pyra. The real reason is because Mithra kind of already had her story 500 years ago, and this sort of a Pyra moment to shine, but whatever. But hey, you can just disagree or agree, I don't know. But I just feel that since Mithra already had her name being shouted 500 years ago during the Aegis War, I feel that Pyra should be the one Rex should be calling out constantly and not Mithra, but whatever. Anyways, Rex ends up finding Jin struggling to fight some weird looking enemies. Helping him out, they form a temporary alliance, meeting with Bridget and Poppy. Oh, and I should also mention, once you've gotten Pyra and Mithra's true form, Rex is obviously able to end up utilizing other blades from other drivers. For example, even though Bridget is Morrig's blade, Rex is able to use her as well. Anyways, it seems the enemy types that the group are fighting are a bit similar to blades, and also probably can be humanized as well, as they have the abilities to heal wounds when damaged. Their brain cells were combined with core crystals. This is a little bit further explained in the Torah DLC, but to be perfectly honest, this game already ends up explaining it. But the long story short, core crystals and human cells are a bit one of the same, and I guess if you end up combining both of them, you can end up becoming this weird monstrous thing called Guldos. It's kind of odd. Once Jin tells the group what happened after the Aegis War, after Malice was taken care of, it seems the minister's high-end Indel wanted to destroy everyone. After Adam left, both Jin and Laura were attacked, and sadly Laura protecting Jin, taking a full blast. This of course causes Jin to not want to lose Laura and the memories that he shared, and he ends up doing the unthinkable and essentially ate Laura's soul to become a flesh eater. Pyra and Mithra never knew what happened after they left, but before things can get a sort of close, an Inferno Goldo shows up and attacks the group, but not before the whole team is back together again, taking out the beast. Before leaving, Rex notices the ID left behind after the monster is defeated. If the player who are familiar with this face may know who this is, but if you don't know, it's okay, the game will remind you later on. Jin rejoins back with Torna, and the group now makes the climb up to the World Tree. And man, talk about no roots or real nature, this place is just filled with some high-tech sci-fi space station. Woo! The World Tree is mostly the final area of the game, and unlike Prison Island and Xenoblade 1, this place is a little bit bigger. During the climb through the World Tree, we get to a bit of a flashback with Amalthus, and yes, the reason why he's the way he is mainly because of a few raiders who killed his mom. Now, on one end, I get the reason, but the fact he already technically killed the men who killed his mom and he's still pissed off at everything else is kind of dumb. Amalthus is one who of course awoke in Malos, and also took their core crystals when he climbed the world tree. He did not awoke in Mithra, but instead gave the crystal to Adam. For now, Amalthus execute order destroy the world tree, and starts to use Haze's core crystal to not only take control of Blades, but also take control of the Titans as well. Mikhail protects Rex's group mainly because they remind him of the people he once hung out with back in the day. Since Mikhail, funny enough, is also a flesh eater. He too survived for many years. Actually, I should more so say he's not a flesh eater. He's more so of a blade eater, because there is an actual difference. If a human gets a piece of their blade's core crystal, it means that they are blade eaters. And if a driver is consumed by their blade, it means that they're a flesh eater. Since, you know, humans have flesh, blades don't have flesh, you know how it be. Look, it's the only explanation I can go ahead and say for that. Anyways, Amalthus is sort of stopped, but unfortunately Mikhail is perished during the entire explosion. So before I go on, I have to say, the music, which is basically like the Engage the Enemy version of Xenoblade 2, is so good and used here. I don't know what it is, but even if the movement for the cutscenes is stiff as hell, this piece of music always gets me. Like, it doesn't even, it can be in like the most saddest moment, like if you drop a pancake on the floor. I don't know, put this music out of context and it probably is like the most depressing thing you could probably ever do. There's also a piano version of the song, but I love the one with the choir in it, since, you know, I'm a sucker for those. Anyways, after Mikhail's heroic sacrifice, both Jin and Malos have one final speech together before Malos goes meet with his creator and father, and Jin takes care of Rex and the others. Being the final fight with Jin and taking him down, Jin ends up bringing up a good point during their clash. If Rex dies, who should follow in his ideal mindset? And Rex mainly says, isn't that the same thing as to why blades exist? You know, you guys also end up utilizing your memories, but you could probably end up keeping at least some sort of amount of memories in your head. But before things could come to a close, Amalthus shows his ugly head, this time pouring a bunch of core crystals as he absorbed both Patroka and Akos. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Patroka and Akos, they remind me of Lorithia from Xenoblade 1. They're in little scenes, and once they die, their death just does not mean much for me. To Jin and the rest of the gang, it means a lot, but to me, the player, it doesn't really do much. And I really hope that they don't have insignificant characters in Xenoblade 3, because I'm getting sick of that, because that's like 3 times they've done this now. But anyways, the group fights against Amalthus, and boy, since I was sort of making the game harder for myself, and then also a bit more fun, I was playing on New Game Plus, obviously to make it a little bit easier for recording purposes. I did end up losing this fight, since some things were not going right on my end, but we managed to beat him the second try, so go me! After taking Amalthus down, he starts to do a few more final attacks before Jin uses his full blade powers to not only protect Rex and the others, but to also be put to rest. Jin flash freezes Amalthus as he thinks of his mother one last time before fading away, along with Jin as he tells us to stop Malos. And this is kind of the part where we make it to Elysium, which it looks like a dank ass mess with not much in between. We end up finding out that there used to be people here and people can end up living here, and we end up finding a church that ends up tolling the bell. We end up finding out that this is actually where the creator actually is. This is where the architect lives. Once we make it here, unfortunately, we get some very weird set pieces where Rex has to end up going up against his teammates, and unfortunately, they end up telling their true feelings about certain things. Nia saying, why do you only care about Pyra? Rex being told that he shouldn't have been the one to wield the Aegis blade and it should have been Zeke. Finding out that Morag and Bridget found out that we were just wasting our time, and that Tora wanted to be an actual blade and it's no fair that Rex was a blade. And then we get to the final scene where Rex ends up having to hang out with both Mithra and Pyra. Mithra having the personality of Pyra, and Pyra having the personality of Mithra. Unfortunately, this was just only a test. Rex is only but a kid and cannot handle so much. So Pyra told her father to stop this illusion in this test, and basically proceeds to talk to the team with the true architect right there in front of our faces. The architect ends up explaining what he manages to do into the world, and that, you know, back then he ended up trying to create a new universe. Unfortunately, him trying to create said new universe also caused the previous universe to implode. And if people are a bit familiar, the cutscene that was shown with a man named Kalos and a woman, if you played Xenoblade 1, this cutscene may look familiar to you. And if you don't end up remembering, well, here's come the spoilers now. And go. Anywho, to end up explaining this cutscene in full, this cutscene is essentially the same exact cutscene that you saw in Xenoblade 1, where two scientists were trying to basically end up trying to start something, with Kalos, who is basically Zanza in Xenoblade 1, was trying to go ahead and recreate the world. Unfortunately, him doing what he was doing causes the plant to explode, and having both two titans, both Bionis and Mechonis, to be created. One being Zanza and the other one being Maynef. This is actually the reason why the architect said that he has managed to send 3 people away. Malos being one of them, Numa being one of them, and there is also one more. That other person is actually Alvis in Xenoblade 1. This is actually the reason why the definitive version does give Alvis a bit of the Aegis symbol necklace, because at first in the original game, Alvis didn't have that symbol before. He didn't have that kind of necklace. So in the definitive version, they blatantly, clearly end up saying, yes, Alvis is the 3rd blade that was sent to a different dimension after the events of Xenoblade 2. I do like this, and it shocked the hell out of me that they decided to do this. Players who end up finding out about this for the very first time are obviously shocked. I was a bit confused because the only part that kind of stuck out to me was actually the scene that was shown again with both the two scientists and, you know, Kalos creating the world. That shocked me to no end because it was a scene that I vividly remember in the game, where it's like, we've seen this scene before, but I didn't remember where it was played. After the whole situation is, you know, taking form and everything, Malos is basically trying to utilize the actual full-on machine to end up summoning a bunch of other angels to send down into Alrest to destroy Alrest for good. The architect ends up telling us that, hey, you know, I'm gonna give you like this power to be able to stop the machine there, so why don't you go ahead and go do that and go stop Malos before he kind of destroys the whole world. And that's exactly what the team does. We end up utilizing Numa's power and also utilizing the architect's abilities to stop Malos for good. Even though we try our darnest to explain to Malos that Jin didn't want to die. He just wanted to live in a world with you, but Malos being himself, he says, like, you know, he doesn't care, like, he just wants to destroy everything, and it's like, you know, he brings up some good points here and there, but that, you know, Rex being his hero self, manages to utilize the final powers of the architect's abilities and to defeat the robot once and for all. I will say this though, the biggest part was this scene end up having the line that was utilized at the end of Xenoblade 1. And it's this line right here.
We use our power to fell a god, and then seize our destiny!
That's right. This scene right here. At first, I'm gonna be real with you, I didn't know what that line was. I thought that line was just a random line that they just put in the game. But then when I looked back on the final battle and on Xenoblade 1 and heard that line again, I was like, wait. You mean to tell me that both of these stories are happening simultaneously? You mean to tell me that the final battle with Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2 is happening at the same time? Because the artifice or the architect ends up saying that you need to hurry because the other me, the Zanza version of me, is about to, you know, be killed soon, so you kind of need to hurry up before things get locked away. And that's essentially what happened. it's interesting too, because you can auto assume that Alvis kind of was giving us a direction to defeat Zanza, because for all intents and purposes, who's to say that the architect didn't build Alvis to, you know, guide us to the direction to be able to defeat Zanza? But then again, the architect didn't really know what was going to really happen, but he had confidence, you know? So once that is happening, once Zanza is dead for good, the architect's powers end up being sealed, but not before the architect does one final thing. Unfortunately, after we've defeated Malice, and Malice said that he wished that he was Rex's driver and got to meet him instead, you know, bittersweet, he ends up disappearing for good, and that is the end of Malice. But not before the wonderful World Tree space stations start to collapse, and unfortunately, with gravity being a bitch, we end up having to deal with the fact that if this space station falls into All-Rest, it will destroy the entirety of everything. So, unfortunately, the team has to escape and figure out a way. Numa ends up telling us that there is a way to stop it. But before the full team can leave, Numa ends up stopping both Azuta and Poppy and basically ends up telling her what she's about to do. She basically tells them, hey, you know, there is a way to doing it, but unfortunately it has to be done by other means. Before the team can finally end up escaping, Numa is on the other side of the bridge, and unfortunately, this is the first lie that she has ever told Rex, ever. She cuts down the bridge and then ends up proceeding to say that this is something that I have to do, and the only way to stop the space station is that I need to use the last amount of power of Artifice Ion. This actually makes Rex cry, and I will end up admitting, this scene also kind of got me too, because you have to think of it from a real life perspective. You're literally seeing the person that you love on the other side about to sacrifice themselves, and you cannot do anything about it. Like, it's such a perfect scene, and it shows that, you know, Rex has to grow. Like, he has to let her go. And he tries to make Poppy take him over to her, but she was promised to not end up helping Rex at all, because Numa knew that Rex was going to ask Poppy. Good on her too, by the way. So yeah, that ends up basically having Numa go sacrifice herself, and Rex has to come into the reality that he has to leave her behind. Rex and the team ends up leaving behind Numa, and they end up going to escape, as Numa ends up using the last power of the Artifice Ion to end up preventing the space station from falling onto All-Rest. And with that, we end up cutting to the credits, but not before we end up finding out that the whole entire Titans start to conjoin together and to create one big giant continent. And I'm pretty sure this continent we're probably going to visit in Xenoblade 3, but who knows? It's gonna be great. But luckily enough, Rex is not without a good ending either. The power of the core crystal reforms again and starts to glow, and little do we see both Pyra and Mithra back again, where Rex gets Pyra, Mithra, and Mia gets nobody. God damn. But no, on all jokes aside, I did love this ending. This ending was so well done. I find it better than Xenoblade 1's ending, even though Xenoblade 1's ending is still pretty good, but I just love Xenoblade 2's ending. And we're not done yet. I'm going to give a little bit of a short TLDR for the Torna Golden Country. So, to give a quick synopsis, Torna Golden Country was essentially a DLC that players can end up enjoying, and it's essentially a prologue of 500 years ago during the Aegis War. You end up taking control of Laura and Jin, and you end up getting a much better battle system that I wish was in the base game. You get to end up utilizing both Laura, the driver, and Jin, the blade, in battle. You actually get to use the blades this time, unlike before. During the times, you end up finding Mikhail in his young age before he becomes a flesh blade eater and annoying us in Xenoblade 2's base game. We end up finding Adam, who's very, very calm in character. We end up finding Mithra, who's a little little bit different in this game, even though she kind of is a little bit similar, but a lot of people kind of ends up saying that she's cocky, she's stuck up, and she's always giving sarcasm and all that other stuff, or that she's a simpleton and she still can't cook for the life of her. You think after 500 years in the future you learned how to cook, but I guess during those 500 years you were kind of asleep, but whatever. Anyways, Laura ends up trying to find her mother. She ends up finding out that her mother passed away. She ends up encountering her quote-unquote father, who abused the crap out of her. And luckily enough, Jin comes to her aid, cuts off the dude's arm, and we don't see him until the very end of the game. Meanwhile, during this time, we ended up at the capital of Torna, meaning the Torna king, as he ends up telling us that, hey, you know what, help us out with this Malus problem. Malus shows up, showing his cocky-ass attitude, sending his wonderful gargoyles to attack the city of Torna, and it's by far the most annoying thing that can ever happen in the game. And, you know, we take care of him all willy-nilly. He ends up taking a piece of the core crystal and says, hey, I'll wait for you at the top of the Torna Titan, and then we can end up having this cool-ass final boss fight. Meanwhile, you won't be able to get all the way there because there's a community level system that the Torna DLC ends up introducing. And I hate this stupid system because it ends up locking you out of progress. And the thing is, I know why they did it. They did it so that you have a longer session, because Torna is pretty short. Like, it's not long at all. It's a pretty short DLC. But with the community thing, they extend it further. The fact that you have to get community level 2 to progress the story, and then after that, they jump it to 4. Just so you can do all the side quests. And the reason why I don't really care for all the side quests is it doesn't matter. Like, there are some that give context behind certain names, like when you visit the Gormati Titan again, where you find out that the tree or the lake or whatever is called a certain name, and you find a side quest that is related to why it's named that in the first place. I didn't mind that. That's actually pretty cool. What I didn't like is the fact that I'm forced to do all these stupid dumb side quests for a bunch of characters that are dead at this point, and we will never see them again. Who knows? We probably see them in the base game. I don't really fully remember. I can't really try to remember every friggin' NPC in this game, because the side quests still stem from the same fetch quests, so to speak. And the worst part about Xenoblade 2 compared to Xenoblade 1's Definitive Edition, because they learned from this, thank God, is that you don't get an actual quest tracker. What I mean by that is that when you're going through certain quests, they don't give you a general direction of a dot like they do in Definitive Edition. And I'm so glad that they learned from the side quests bit and decided to make it better in Definitive Edition, because that was also a problem in the base normal version of Xenoblade 1, where the tracker sucked as well, and you just have to find your way. So obviously I'm hoping Xenoblade 3 ends up implementing that. Once you reach the final arc in the Torna DLC and you have a fight with Malus in the most epic final battle with the two mechs fighting side by side, we get to see Mithra's power get fully unlocked after her friend Catboy and quote-unquote Mikhail ends up dying. And a lot of people ends up dying in the Torna because of the fact of what happened with Mithra screaming out loud and transforming her blade to Numa's true blade, and she ends up fighting Malus head-on, one-on-one. Unfortunately, Mithra kind of goes a little bit overboard and starts to fire shots all over on Torna, destroying the Torna Titan for good. After the fight, Mithra ends up finding out that Milton died, and she ends up sealing herself away, turning her into Pyra. Adam ends up taking Mithra and Pyra's sword and putting it away. She ends up leaving. Laura ends up putting her mother to full rest as she ends up finding Gorp again. Yeah, the man's name is Gorp or Gord or whatever his name is. And this was kind of inappropriate because after the whole situation that happened, after the whole Malus fight, you end up fighting this dude one final time, and it's like, man, that's a massive pace breaker, you think? but he's easily dealt with. We kill him and then the credits roll. The Tora DLC is pretty good. I like the battle system more so than the story, because the story, it's okay. Like, I will end up admitting it's okay. And they're doing the whole extra story thing again for Xenoblade 3. I don't know if, well, I don't really know what they're going to showcase, but I'm really hoping that it's better than Future Connected and Xenoblade 2's Golden Country. Not to say that they're bad, it's just that you can kind of tell that there are some moments in the game that is not as hype as the base games. So, I mean, that's just my opinion though. But overall, no, the entirety of Xenoblade 2's experience at first was very jank, very hard to understand, and the tutorial just sucked. There was also so much tutorial that I didn't even knew what the hell to do. I didn't know about the D stuff. I didn't know how to go ahead and do blade combos. I didn't know how to cancel friggin' attacks because I didn't know what the hell that meant. And I didn't know a lot of other things. It was really hard to get through the game at first, but during second playthroughs, New Game Plus or not, it was a bit better because I understood it. It was a lot easier to grasp and a lot easier to be able to defeat, you know, bosses that were a bit difficult. There's also the challenge mode, which I didn't showcase, but the challenge mode has things that you can end up interacting. You may have noticed during the New Game Plus playthrough, I end up having Shulk and Fiora on the team, and also Elma. That's because in the challenge mode, you can end up meeting Shulk, Fiora, and Elma, and once you finish their challenges, you can end up having them in the base game. It's pretty cool because during the time when you're going after the third Aegis Blade, they mentioned that your blades are unable to perform level 2s and 3 specials, but if you have Shulk, Fiora, and Elma, you can still use your full blade combos, and that's obviously because Shulk, Fiora, and Elma are humans, they're not blades. Why are they not characters you can utilize in the game? I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know. I really don't know, because I honest to God thought we were gonna have the capabilities of wielding or using Shulk and Fiora and Elma in the game. But hey, at least they end up sporting their traditional theme when you're fighting the unique monsters, so I do like that. But anyways, that is the end of Xenoblade 2. I thought I was going to be talking about Xenoblade 1 as well, but in all honesty, if I talk about Xenoblade 1, this video would not be able to get out, and I do just want to focus on Xenoblade 2 more. There was a little bit of fluff here and there, and considering it's also really hot, guys, it's super difficult to do these kind of things in this heat. But I am hoping to be able to go ahead and get Xenoblade 1 and X eventually down the road. I will end up keeping the footage that I do have for Xenoblade 1 at the very least. And then once Xenoblade X2 comes out, then, you know, rear its ugly head. But I hope you guys enjoy this, and I hope it end up helping you guys as to why I actually do love Xenoblade 2 overall. I guess I should also mention why I fully love Rex as a character. He is a character that is traditionally growing. Shulk is essentially a character who's already sort of quote-unquote perfect already, so he kind of already has his established character arcs and everything, while Rex is just slowly having his character arc. And once we hit chapter 7 and after the whole Adam situation, we see that character growth fully get utilized at the very core end of chapter 8, and I love that. Like, I know a lot of people have issues with Rex, you know, in terms of his voice direction, and the voice direction, I didn't want to go too much into it because it's been like a dead horse already. The voice direction sucks. Like, it's really bad because there are scenes that the characters stop for like a few seconds before talking, and it's really apparent when you notice it in certain scenes where they just are either talking low, talking high, their emotion is not there in terms of the scene's facial expressions sometimes, and it just feels really bad. I would want to say that the one that I find the worst out of the voice direction might be Azuda, cause I gotta say it's kinda not good. Like, I don't mind the guy who voices him, but it just sounds a bit you can really tell the difference in the voice direction between Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2, and especially Xenoblade X. And I don't know if it's the same person who did Xenoblade 1. I highly doubt it, because if it was, I don't think the cutscenes would be like that. And I think most people have said that the reason why the voice direction is the way how it is, 90% of the actors didn't get the context behind certain scenes. And if that is the case, why the hell didn't they get the goddamn context for these scenes? Because it kind of makes certain cutscenes kind of jank. Like, I'm upset. I really am glad that, you know, they are going to get better, obviously. But Xenoblade 2 is still amazing. Blades aside, the quests are a little bit better than in 1. Because at least in 2, the Blade quests are voiced. So they're not just staring at a blank screen of text that you know, people probably just ignore and skip past. So yeah, there is that. And I think overall, aside from this being like over an hour, I hate myself. This probably would have been more than an hour if I actually did 2 and 1 at the same time, but I wasn't doing that. I hope you guys end up learning bits and pieces to why I love the game. And I hope to see you guys later down the road, where I will probably give my thoughts on Xenoblade 3 in the future. But until then, good luck to you guys, and if you guys end up getting into Xenoblade 3 when it comes out, enjoy the game. It's a fantastic story from start to finish. I recommend playing both 1 and 2 before jumping into 3, because 3 is going to be referencing 1 and 2 elements, and you don't want to be behind when you have zero idea what the hell is going on in the story. Anyways, I've been Code Pika, and I'll be seeing you guys next time for whatever random video I come up with. This is my outro, and it will forever be my outro. Catch you guys in the next electrifying video. See yas!